All right, buckle up because today we're diving into something pretty wild, like NASA tracking tigers
Ah,
from space.
you got that right.
No, seriously, we are talking about how NASA tech is helping save some of Earth's most iconic animals. Tigers, jaguars, elephants, you name it.
It's pretty amazing stuff.
These animals, they're facing a huge problem habitat loss.
Huge is an understatement.
I mean, imagine like your entire neighborhood shrinking down to just a couple of houses.
That's the kind of pressure these animals are dealing with.
But there's good news too. We're talking cutting-edge technology coming from, get this, space.
That's right. NASA's expertise, it goes way beyond rockets and astronauts. We're talking a whole new perspective on Earth, and it's making a difference for conservation.
Okay, so let's start with tigers. Did you know these incredible creatures have lost, get this, 93% of their historical range?
It's a shocking statistic. Really drives home the impact we humans are having on the planet. But, and this is important, tiger numbers have actually started to climb back up since 2010.
So some good news there.
It shows that conservation efforts, they are working.
That's awesome. And now NASA Tech is getting in on the action too.
Big time.
They're using these things called VIRs, MODIS, and Landsat.
Yeah, they're like insanely powerful sensors up on satellite.
Basically, imagine being able to see the entire Earth's surface, even in the dead of night.
That's VIRS. And MODIS, that's like having a giant environmental checkup happening all the time. Vegetation health, moisture levels, it's incredible.
Like having X-ray vision for the planet.
Exactly. And the best part? We can track changes in the tiger's habitat in real time. We can see deforestation happening, identify poaching threats, things we could never do from the ground.
That is seriously impressive.
Right. It's game-changing.
Now hold on, because there's more. This tech, it helps scientists find something really cool. Empty forests.
And no, we're not talking about forests with no life in them.
Right.
Empty forests, these are areas that are like prime tiger habitat. They're just waiting for tigers to come back.
Okay, so like rediscovering lost territory.
Exactly. And get this, if we could reintroduce tigers to these empty forests, it could actually increase their current land base by, are you ready for this? 50%.
Wow. Now that's what I call the reason to roar.
I'll say.
But it's not just tigers feeling the love from this space-age technology. Jaguars, over in the Americas, they're in a tough spot too.
Absolutely. Similar problem, different continent. Jaguars have lost a heartbreaking 50% of their historical range, and one place that's really hurting is the Gran Chaco woodland in South America.
The Gran Chaco, yeah.
This ecosystem, it's incredibly important. Jaguars, they're a vital part of it.
Right, so we've got these jaguars, the royalty of the Gran Chaco, and they're losing their kingdom. But NASA data, it's not just about, like, spotting animals from space, right?
Right, it's bigger than that.
It's like this whole other level of conservation, yeah.
You got it. With jaguars, NASA data, it's crucial, but in a different way.
Yeah.
We're not just tracking them directly. Instead, think of it like scientists are using this space view to create almost like a conservation game plan.
Okay, so like a blueprint, highlighting the most important areas.
Exactly. They pinpoint these jaguar hotspots, the areas that need the most protection.
Makes sense. But knowing where to protect and actually doing it, those are two different things.
Yeah, that's the thing. There was this study, right? They used NASA data, identified all these critical jaguar habitats, but guess what?
Right.
36%, a full 36% of these areas, especially down in Argentina's Chaco, they're designated as low protection.
Hold on. So even though we know these areas are super important for jaguars, they're not actually, protected.
Sadly, that's often the case. Conservation, it's complicated.
Right. It's not just about knowing what to do, it's the how.
Yeah, you've got economics, politics, social factors, the whole thing.
A balancing act, for sure. Trying to make choices that work for both wildlife and people. Okay, so tigers, jaguars, who's next on our little conservation world tour?
Let's talk elephants. These guys, these gentle giants, they're facing a crisis too. Imagine this. African savanna elephants, they now live in only 15% of their historical range.
15%. Serious.
Seriously, imagine a football field rate. Elephants are squeezed into an area smaller than the end zone.
Wow, that's not a lot of space. No wonder they're endangered.
It's a real problem. And a major study, it went from 2007 to 2014, confirmed it. They found a huge decline in elephant numbers.
So where does NASA fit into all of this? I mean, we can't exactly spot elephants from space, can we?
Not directly, but we can see how they impact the environment. There was this fascinating study in Kenya. They used NASA satellite images, and they looked at the vegetation, the plants.
Okay.
See, these satellites, they're so precise, they can detect tiny differences in the vegetation, like a super high-tech environmental health tracker.
So what did they learn about elephants with this tracker?
Turns out, elephants, they love dense forests, especially near water.
Makes sense. Who doesn't love a good watering hole?
Right. But it's serious, too. The study also found that elephants, they avoid open areas, especially if there's a lot of human activity.
Yeah, I mean, nobody likes feeling crowded.
Exactly. And this information, it's huge. When we know what elephants prefer, we can make better decisions about, say, land management.
We can focus our conservation efforts in the right places.
Precisely. For example, the study in Kenya, it recommended prioritizing elephant access to those lush, forested areas, even if they're not within, traditional protected zones.
So finding those win-win situations where elephants can thrive and people can too.
Exactly. And it's not just in Africa either. Asian elephants, they're facing similar challenges, often leads to conflict with
This
humans.
is such a cool example of how data can lead to practical win-win solutions.
Absolutely. It's about finding ways for both elephants and people to thrive. And it's not just a concern in Africa. Asian elephants are facing similar pressures, often leads to conflict with humans.
Yeah, I've read about that. It's heartbreaking when these magnificent creatures get caught in the crosshairs of human development.
Exactly. But even in these challenging situations, NASA tech is offering a glimmer of hope. Take Bhutan, for example. They're using satellite data to map elephant corridors.
Elephant corridors, what are those?
Think of them like elephant highways, the routes they use to move between different areas of their habitat.
Okay, like migration routes.
Exactly. By mapping these corridors, conservationists can identify potential conflict zones, places where elephants might bump into human settlements or farmland.
And then hopefully find ways to avoid those conflicts, right?
Exactly. It might involve creating safe passages for elephants, establishing buffer zones around human settlements, or even working with local communities to develop elephant-friendly farming practices.
So instead of a tug of war over space, it's about finding ways to coexist peacefully.
Precisely. And that's what makes this technology so powerful. It's not just about data points on a map. It's about using that data to guide smarter, more compassionate conservation decisions.
It's like you said earlier, it's about connecting the dots, seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. And what's really exciting is that we're just scratching the surface of what's possible. As our understanding of both technology and ecology continues to grow, who knows what other incredible applications we'll uncover.
It's like we're on the verge of a whole new era of conservation, one driven by data, powered by innovation, and fueled by a deep respect for the natural world.
And it's not just up to the scientists and conservationists. We all have a role to play in this story.
Absolutely. So for those listening who are feeling inspired, what's one thing you'd recommend they do to be part of the solution?
Stay curious. Learn as much as you can about these issues. Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one.
I like the sound of that.
Because the more you know, the more empowered you are to make informed decisions in your own life, whether it's supporting sustainable practices, advocating for change, or simply spreading awareness.
Beautifully said. Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave you with this. We've seen how NASA tech is transforming conservation for tigers, jaguars, and elephants. What other applications can you imagine for this data-driven approach? What other challenges facing our planet could we address with this kind of space-eye view? This is a question worth pondering. A huge thank you to all of you for joining us on this incredible journey. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world around us.